Hello everyone, welcome again to the MyBiz channel. I'm Boz Fisher and we have here Andrew Bycroft from iResilience and also partner of MyBiz Security. Today's topic is cyber impact. How can it impact you as an SME? So what is cyber impact there, Andrew? Define it to me.
Okay, well, cyber impact is some kind of impact on your assets. It's obviously taken some kind of cyber breach. That's been the method behind it, but it's had some kind of impact on your assets. And in fact, there are actually 6 kinds of impacts that an organization can face. And some of those are
Yep.
enough to, fortunately, send small businesses out of business.
Yes. All right. So we know the industry is saying, or I've heard it lots. They said that when a small business gets cyber breach, there's a 60% chance of them basically going out of business within 6 months' time. Why is that? What is the downside of a small business being cyber breached?
Yeah, well, typically it comes down to the fact that small businesses suffer losses of cash flow. I mean, they don't have a lot of cash flow to begin with, and that cost of recovery from that breach is probably going to use up a large percentage of their cash flow. And unfortunately, that means they might not have enough to pay their employees. They may not actually be able to pay their regular bills, and they end up having to shut the doors, unfortunately. But financial impacts is just one of the 6 kinds of impacts, but it's probably the most prevalent one in terms of putting small businesses out of business when there is a cyber breach.
Okay, so the industry talks a lot about big numbers. One of them I've read, and interesting that a cyber breach can be anywhere, 3.8 million to 8.4, depending on the type of cyber breach. But for an SME, it really doesn't make any sense because when you look at 3 million, that's just way over. What does it actually really mean to an SME? Although they completely ignore it.
So for an SME, they should be ignoring those numbers because those numbers have come from studies that have largely been based on massive organizations, the kinds of organizations that make billions of dollars a year in revenue. So for a small business, they certainly don't have that many assets to begin with. So you can only lose effectively the value of your business. I guess you could go into negative terms, but you're certainly not going to be billions of dollars in the red when you don't have that many assets. The reason why those numbers are quite big, by the way, for large organizations is because we talked about financial impacts, but there's operational impacts, there's physical impacts, there's reputational impacts, there's also social impacts, there's impacts on the people as well. And the reputational ones are often the ones that are hidden. So you typically don't recognize those straight away. They happen over time, and it may be 2-3 years down the track before you realize actually we never recovered in terms of our revenue. What we're making before this breach, we still haven't made it back. They may have lost customers. They may have tried to get more customers on board, but that reputation has prevented them from fully rebounding. So that's typically where those massive numbers come from. For small businesses, they don't have they probably haven't got that massive reputation of those massive brands out there that are making billions of dollars. So yes, you do need to have some concern about your reputation. Your brand is certainly important to you, but it's going to be your lack of cash flow which will probably hurt you the most.
Okay, interesting. So for a small business, how would they go about saying, okay, how do I value my business in terms of having a sort of a rough understanding of what could potentially, for example, a ransomware do to and cost their organization? So if they've got a better understanding, then there's greater incentive to do something and getting prepared already.
Yeah, so ransomware is one of those attacks that certainly has the potential to put small businesses out of business. I suppose we should probably talk a bit about it. So it's when you get one of those emails that seems quite innocent, someone clicks on the link, and then all of a sudden it invokes a piece of malware, a piece of software that you don't really want, that kicks off in the background, starts encrypting all of your files. What we mean by that is you can't access your files anymore. And when you try to access those files, you actually get a message saying, please pay us a ransom in order to access your files. So effectively, the bad guys, the cyber criminals, are taking control of your data, and in order to get it back, you actually need to pay them a ransom, and you typically need to pay that in Bitcoins. So in terms of the cost there's obviously the cost of not being able to access those files. So if you're trying to do business and you can't access the information that you need to do business, well, that's going to impact your productivity. So there's going to be that loss of productivity. In some cases, you may actually be bound by contracts to get certain objectives met by certain dates, and delays in trying to get access to these files or not being able to access these files could mean that you end up with penalties that you've got to pay. So again, the numbers start to increase when we start looking at that. Also, we need to consider the fact that if you don't have some way to restore that data from, say, a backup, then you need to obviously pay that ransom. And there's obviously the cost of the ransom, but there's also a learning curve in learning how to pay with Bitcoins. Most people have never actually had to exchange their currency into Bitcoins for a start, and then work out how to pay that once they've got that Bitcoin. How do I pay it? So that can actually waste hours of time as well.
Yep. All right. So there's obviously quite a detailed terms of impact there, but a lot of organizations don't think about also the post impact. So now my business is back operational, but how do the people inside see the business owners? How do other organizations that they might have had partnership with, vendors, partners, clients, how do they see them as a trustworthy, accountable organization once they've been breached?
That's a really good point, Bose, because that can certainly happen, that trust can be eroded. And we talked a bit about reputation before. This is when those longer term reputational impacts start to take their toll. And yes, you could actually lose, for example, your customers because they lose trust in you. You could lose business partners and suppliers. All of a sudden, they don't want to work with you. Employees as well can also end up taking a morale hit, and they may not want to work there anymore. So if all of that starts happening around about the same time, if you actually haven't already gone out of business because your cash flow has been eaten into, well, that's probably going to be the next thing that could impact you. And if you don't have employees working, well, you don't have that ability to generate revenue, so it can be quite tough.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping up this conversation, what is the key takeaway for SMEs when considering cyber impact? Like now and for the future, what is something that can be better prepared?
Well, capitalize on the fact that you've got a small, nimble organization with the ability to disseminate communications relatively easily, and also to actually have a consistent culture, and a culture of compassion, transparency, also adaptability and courage. Make sure you've got those 4 elements there. Those will actually help you from the people perspective, protect everything that matters to you. Everyone will want to play their part in that. And it's so much easier for small organizations to get at. Big organizations need to rely so much more on technologies and processes to achieve the same, because they don't have that ease of communications and that consistent culture. So really leverage that. And as always, make sure that you're not investing more than you need to on any kind of measures, because you should be investing proportional to the value of your assets.
Yeah, excellent. Andrew, well said. Look, with that, I want to thank you very much. Obviously going to talk about more topics, and we're coming up with some training as well. With that, I'm going to wish you stay safe, vigilant, and healthy. And Andrew, again, thank you very much. And if you wish to contact us, reach us through mybizsecurity.com. And also, we'll be coming out with a book very soon, so get your hands on that. Andrew, much appreciated.
Thank you.
All righty, talk soon.